Hi all, welcome to the next edition of Amnic Cast. Today we have Turja Narayanan Chaudhuri, who's Associate Director at Ernst& Young. But before we start off, I just want to put a disclaimer, like our panelists will be sharing their personal opinions, knowledge and expertise in their respective field. Their views are their own and then they do not represent their official positions, policies or endorsements of the companies they work for. All the discussions here is intended to reflect their individual experience and insights. Right? Welcome, Turja. Why don't you
Thank you
actually
so much, Sathya. Perfect. Thank you so much, first of all, to Sathya and also to the Amnic team for this initiative and really great, guys. So I'm part of EY today. So I work in EY as an associate director in the cloud practice. Roughly 12 to 13 years of experience. Started my journey in cloud roughly in 2017. So that's when I used to work in PricewaterhouseCoopers as the lead AWS serverless developer. Then kind of moved into the infra space, spent a few years in Accenture setting up cloud transformation initiatives, and then joined EY in the internal platform team. So now I'm part of a platform team, and that's when we are kind of helping our customers and clients adopt the GenAI. So that is how I kind of got involved into the GenAI space quite let's say 6 7 months back. It's still hot, and it was even hotter at that time. And we primarily I work on helping people understand the capabilities and in a sense kind of moving to the next phase, kind of from a proof of concept kind of a thing to the next phase, and how to enable organizations including mine own to kind of rapidly innovate on GenAI capabilities. So really happy to be here and share my thoughts on this and related topics.
Awesome, Turja, to have you. How do you see the adoption of Gen AI happening in the enterprise space? Right, what are the use cases you see evolving, and what are the opportunities that are there?
See, to be very fair, yes, obviously it's interesting. Anybody will tell you, all of the reports will kind of tell you, let's say the usage of ChatGPT it becoming having 1 million users in, I think, fastest across everybody. So when I speak to people, the one of the things that I have heard is, which is very interesting, that this is the first technology that has actually landed up in a C-suite's laptop.
Hmm.
Before that, many technology has actually come, right? It's like many transformative, you can think of metaverse, cloud. They all knew, the C-suite obviously knew about it, but they never played around it directly like they are doing with ChatGPT, right? So there is not a single conversation where this thing doesn't come. There are projects which don't get funded. For example, if there is
Correct.
not a GenAI component in it, that is how it is. But at the same time, if you look, for example, the full capability of how GenAI. So, for example, today only so Accenture, I think, is the only big company as such, which is doing, I think, 450 projects in pipeline, and all of the rest of the India IT has not even caught up. So, if when we speak to our leaders also, we really don't think that it in itself will be something that will itself drive a $10 million PNL. That's now
Mhm.
how I think it. Obviously, it will have to be integrated in every single small thing,
Mhm.
your workforce, your how you do your HR, your transformation, cloud transformation initiatives, and all. Everywhere it will be put in here and there. So that just GenAI in itself might not give you the kind of revenue that, let's say, SAP HANA or S4 HANA or an ERP implementation normally used to give, right? It's more like a combination. But yes, the opportunities are tremendous. I personally feel that, and everybody's kind of interested. And as I told you, right, with ChatGPT, it has kind of become real. There are a lot
Mhm.
of challenges also, but I am closely seeing that people are kind of going into production also now, slightly. And
Yeah.
internally, 100%, most of the companies I am working are very interested in having, let's say, an internal chatbot and stuff like that in industrialized rack patterns. They're not similarly interested in exposing that chatbot to the external users sometimes, because let's say what happens if some bad answer comes. And very recently we saw that, you might have seen that discussion with chat gpt, or the company's chatbot, and where a car was apparently sold in $1 because you
Mhm.
have kind of like a prompt injection technique. So those challenges are there. How do you monitor the responses? So it's much more complicated than how it seems, to be very fair. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it's very, very interesting. And every single C-suite member you talk to will tell you that they are kind of not going to fund anything unless and until there is some sort of a GenAI component embedded somewhere.
Interesting. And you have a and you are seeing companies across, like some are in POC stage, some are actually trying to actually figure out like how do you take it to production, right? How do you see these evolving, and what do you think is a critical stuff that's needed to for a company to actually take through this Gen AI journey?
See, to be very fair, to elaborate on this topic, like a kind of like a continuation of the earlier. So everybody is interested, right? So they are
Mhm.
obviously interested in POCs. They're interested in doing this. At any point of time, there are so many POC projects that are ongoing in any enterprise, right? And every single tool, if you see, for example, Stack Overflow, they release Stack Overflow AI, right? So every
Mhm.
single tool is constantly embedding AI into stuff. So startups are much more, how to say, like aggressive as always. So they are always kind of adopting the latest and greatest anytime. At the same time, for example, the valuation that some of these companies like OpenAI are commanding, roughly, I heard something around 70 to 80 billion USD could be their valuation if they go to the market. And also, so it's like a lot of money is changing hands at this place. But at the same time, if you look at some enterprises or even companies, they don't know how to upskill the company as a whole on how to actually take that engineering expertise or that engineering workforce and kind of channel them into. So many people come to us just to understand, and we are trying to do the same for our company, right? How everybody in EY can contribute, let's say. And I think that's the same problem for every single company, right? How do you channelize
Yeah.
your things into a way? So I will tell you, some companies have taken a very aggressive stance, right? So for example, if you have heard Samsung, they said, no, I will block ChatGPT, right? But similarly,
Mhm.
where I was reading through a Salesforce AI report, they're saying 90% or something around that, I don't remember the exact number, are using unapproved tools. So AI tools which has not been approved, but if somebody's feeling, let's say, right, okay, that will help me, they're using it anyhow, right? I mean, that's how
Mhm.
users are, right? Whenever they find something that helps them, they will try to use it. Then there are many people who don't know whether this is allowed, this is how to go to the next step. So there is a lack of enterprise wide guidance. So in
Yeah.
pockets, maybe some things are happening, but an individual person, let's say I am a individual employee in a company X, then I really don't know what do I have, what is my next step. I mean, should I directly connect to the Azure OpenAI? Should I connect to a ChatGPT? Should I open it? Should I upload my PDF file? So many questions are running, and there is no good guidance. So how we are thinking about it, and that's why, is like kind of trying to give a very secure environment for our employees to work with uh, AI or GenAI, right? I mean, that is the most important, that they should have that confidence that, okay, I am in somewhere where I can experiment, but at the same time, I am not violating any legal or contractual, or I'm not leaking any data and stuff like that. So you might have seen a lot of press release on ey.ai, the stuff that we are doing on the AI space. So it's kind of also involves this. So transforming the world and also transforming our workforce. So what I feel, this is my idea, like, and this is not something we have 100% done as such, but my thought process, if you think on how a company should kind of encourage, is just like they should treat it as just like any other initiative, right? And when you want to increase the adoption of an initiative, the first thing you need to do is make it easy to access and easy to consume. So you
Mhm.
need to provide. So for example, let's say a company has an internal platform of sorts, right? So many companies today are investing in internal platforms, right? So
Yep.
they have created those scripts and stuff, so create landing zones and all. So use that as a catalyst or as a foundation for your GenAI. So don't drive it separately. So use that same foundation that your users might already be. So let's say, for example, you have a marketplace of sorts where your users go and request stuff. So let's say somebody needs a VM, they go somewhere and request a self-service VM. Similarly, let them request an OpenAI API key.
Mhm.
So obviously, so I mean, that is the idea, right? I mean, make it as easy for them, but at the same time, give them, for example, a workaround. So let's say, for example, you might have a sandbox environment where people don't upload client data, and it's kind of easy to consume. So that's like stage one. So you are giving people kind of like a, just like earlier companies used to give Azure subscriptions, right, with $100 limit. So you
Yep.
might have given to your guys also, that guys, you can play around with it, obviously, and tell me what you learned. Somebody wants to learn Synapse, somebody wants to learn Databricks, they go there and just use it. Similarly, we need to give similar sort of an very easy to use OpenAI key type of, I just write some very simple code, Python code in my laptop, I connect to that OpenAI endpoint, I play around with it. That is stage one. That is more like learning exploration. Then is a little bit more serious people who have now done something on their laptop, shown their boss or something, and now the boss is saying, okay, I will give you some money. Let's do it in a little bit bigger stage. It's still not a production grade, but a little bit bigger stage, and let's see, let's play around with it a little bit. So then you need some sort of a POC environment where you can do a little bit more. You might have some client data sometimes and all, but at the same time, it's a little bit more secure, a little bit more controlled, but also at the same time it should have very easy accessibility. You should still have try to have some sort of a self-service, and all of this is embedded into the platform. Nothing is happening outside of the platform. The same platform is powering all of these offerings, right, in a sense, because the OpenAI or GenAI is just a part of the solution. You still need a front end, you still need an orchestrator, you will still need an Azure function, maybe storage account. All of these things are not going anywhere. This is just another thing that we are adding up. So all of that you already have automated in some way. So automate this GenAI piece also, but also give good guidance to your developers, right? So this could be documentation. This could be which vector storage should I select. Okay, so for example, if I am okay with a SaaS-based solution, then let's choose Pinecone or Quadrant. If I need to deploy in my own data store, then let's choose Fize. I mean, that guidance is very important for somebody who is just getting started. Just like if you see, there are many companies who used to say, even in the software delivery lifecycle, I spoke to a CTO once and he said, I have mandated everybody to use C#. So sometimes it might feel like, okay, why did he do that? But the only thing is that all of the accelerators, everything they are developing, let's say their code linting, everything they're building on C#, right? So they get that benefit. So similarly, a standard architectural pattern on how you should deploy a GenAI, let's say a rack pattern. When I deploy a rack pattern, what should I do? What vector database should I use? Let's say 2-3 databases. How should I do the orchestration? Should I use Llama Index? All of those guidance. So all of those guidance and the individual business case kind of gets combined into this POC of a sorts. And then you have that POC, and then you show to your wider audience, your business partners and all. And let's say they like it, and then let's say it goes to production. So when it goes to production, obviously it becomes tremendous. So for example, there is a concept you might many of the listeners might already know about the LLM judge, right? So LLM judging the response that is coming from another LLM, right? Monitoring or ML ops, right? Let's say you have written a model, versioning that model, sharing. So it's like, but it's nothing that the ML engineers who have gone to prod have not done. It's not relatively very new. So the same kind of rigor, the same kind of practices, the same kind of thinking that, okay, I need an SLA, for example, and ensuring that, for example, let's say how we are creating the architecture when we are thinking, the same thing that you normally think when you call an API, you want to ensure that there is no throttling, right? That you have different instances. So all of those same architecture and engineering patterns. So when I speak to some people, they're saying, guys, I don't know how to develop GenAI application. I say, whatever you have done in the last 15 years, it's just the same thing, right? You are again calling an API. So whatever you used to do when an API used to fail, retry, throttling mechanisms, or distributing the across different instances to ensure that the workload is consistent, all of those same architectural patterns you apply. Yes, the only thing sometimes is a little bit non-deterministic, right? So we as engineers normally always used to work on deterministic, like, okay, I write a code, I have a unit test, it will always give that response. Right now it has gone. So that's why this concepts of monitoring the responses consistently, having a LLM judge the responses. So I was just seeing a startup publish a very nice framework, and they were saying that they are kind of putting another LLM to, first of all, rank their retrieval of the documents and also the final response. So that is the level of granularity and monitoring they're putting. Put one level of monitoring at the retrieval layer, another, because again, you are going to production. And again, it also depends on what kind of data. Let's say I expose a web app or a chatbot for entire EY that anybody in the world can see. Then I have to ensure that, I mean, it doesn't respond something very bad or and biased and that way. But if it is an internal chatbot that, let's say, only my engineers will use, so then it's easier. Another thing that I think most of the enterprises which are at a scale like ours are focusing is on just using it, if for nothing else, just as a knowledge engine, right? So much knowledge spread across a company like, let's say, EY or some of the bigger companies, even mature startups, have a lot of content lying around, right? So one content is in someone SharePoint site, something is in a Teams folder. So kind of already enterprise search helps to some extent. But if you kind of couple it up with some sort of a GenAI infused chatbot or something, and you can find the information very quickly, relevant information, that is like a huge amount of help, especially for a company like EY where we do a lot of audit and work.
Yeah.
So knowing how we have figured out the same thing in another client's tax analysis, say for example, will really help us. So as I was saying, I mean, there is plenty of opportunities, but I think the people need to kind of, what I feel when I speak to people is that they don't have all of those guidelines and controls well documented and thought about. I think they're doing work, but they need to kind of do it very agile, right? Otherwise, what will happen is this thing is changing so much, right? Even if you follow a newsletter, you don't know, right? Today there is Anthropic is releasing this, tomorrow OpenAI is releasing OpenAI Enterprise. I mean, it's like a full-time job just to be aware of what these companies are doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a problem, but yeah, it is what it is. So I think the platform, if you enhance the platform, the internal platform to that extent that it becomes an enabler for your GenAI transformation, and especially enterprises who have already invested in a platform, then it's
Got it.
like a very, very interesting thing.
And are you also seeing these platforms evolving towards like a A/B kind of a testing? Because you just told like, okay, use OpenAI, tomorrow Anthropic releases something, or maybe Llama comes up with something, right? How do you see the experimentation of it to see like which API works for it, like all those things happening?
True. So as I was telling you, so when I was seeing that session by that startup, so they were saying, right? I mean, while doing retreat, so they had actually, so first you need a framework to measure the performance, just like everything else, right? So
Yeah.
let's say you use Java or Node.js, you will have a performance like JMeter or something to measure the performance. Similarly, you need some sort of a way to measure which is better, and then obviously you have to try. So they were saying like chunking strategy. Should I chunk in 5 chunk size of 5 or 10 or 3? So like permutation combinations they were going. So there are different strategies there. So for example, you first figured out which chunking strategy is the best for you, then you fix on that, and then you check which AI, which model is best for me, then you fix
Mm.
both, then you go to the third, or sometimes you might want to do every single permutation combination. So the problem is that what I have seen in the big companies, that everybody is doing this. That is where, I
Oh,
mean, your team is also trying to figure out whether Llama is better than let's say
correct.
Anthropic. My
Mm.
team in the same company is also trying to figure that out. So kind of combining those efforts in a sense helps, so that as a company, let's say you publish these metrics, that guys, okay, these are all the metrics, and this kind of proves that okay, this is better than that in this kind of scope. So that is one. And yes, experimentation will always be there. There is a lot of thought process also, that okay, this is better than that. And then I would actually also tell that many people don't understand this, that no matter what experimentation you do, and this is what I tell to all of my customers, that if you already have a preferred vendor, right, so then it doesn't even matter to some extent if that let's say Google's API is better than Microsoft, but you are a complete Microsoft shop with Dynamics and
Yeah.
Power Apps and everything. So 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 many people go off board, right, overboard in a sense, and they start experimenting with every single thing, as if that will, even if it's better, it will. So kind of putting that in scope, and that is where your overall AI leadership and the AI guidelines and practice kinds of comes into place, kind of putting the scope that, guys, I mean, let's not even think about deploying. So many people, what they are doing is, for example, creating very big GPUs and trying to download, say, Llama 2 7B, and trying to run it, right? The cost
Mm.
itself is so much that maybe no client will actually even buy it. Even if OpenAI, even if when you use OpenAI, even if you, let's say, isolate 5% of the customer base which don't want to use that, still you are okay, because your clients are also Microsoft's clients most of the time, or
Mm.
your clients are already Amazon clients, right? They're already using Amazon. So why do you even think about developing something on prem? Just use SageMaker or whatever it is that Amazon is releasing, right? So those kind of thought processes, and this is where leadership comes in, kind of guides, because whenever something new comes, people get a little emotional, right? They want to do this and that. So kind of structuring that effort is sort of very, yeah, but experimentation is obviously, so we have dedicated experimentation people also in EY who are always trying to experiment with the best. But at the same time, I always say that, see, in a normal enterprise, at if you go to an enterprise today with, let's say, even 10,000 people, you will see 300 POCs, 400 POCs, maybe 1,000 POCs happening at a time. But very frankly, only 2 to 3 of them might actually even make it a marketable product. right?
Yeah.
So that is very important. So just like you as a founder or an investor, there are so many people are coming and pitching to you, right? So same process internally also, and it's even more important because everybody is coming up with the next big idea and how you figure that out. So that is also not even technical, but same kind of concepts that, let's say, you as an investor think about when investing in a company. Even in your internal POCs, those kind of process has to put in place.
And that's a good segue into the next one, right? Like, how do you see now? You said like 500 POCs are happening, some are being tested, right? How do you see that maturing into the production stuff? Are you already starting to see companies are some of these POCs have already gone live? How do you see that evolving?
See, again, a complete, very pertinent question. See, as I told you, right, startups are already kind of doing, right. So most of the startups, if you see, have embedded some sort of so even if you take Stack Overflow, so people were saying when ChatGPT will come, Stack Overflow will kind of go away. Or then there are companies like Microsoft, which is not a startup, but they have invested a lot. So I heard again from an unofficial source sometime that it seems that there was a mandate at Microsoft at some time that I think 70% or 60% of the user stories have to be on GenAI or something like that. Okay, I read somewhere, again, it could be a wrong statement, it was just in a blog. But what I'm trying to say is that the way Microsoft has transformed, if you see embedded Copilot into every single thing, I
Yeah.
just read a report that Amazon, even though they have a much bigger share, has not been able to make that level of a impact. Or even if you think of Google, who were the torch bearers in this space, quite frankly, do you really think they have kind of, so with Power Platform Copilot, with GitHub Copilot, the way they have captured the space? So uh, GitHub Copilot, for example, EY uses, and then there are other companies. So adoption of some of the enterprise tools, and that's what I'm saying, right? Uh, uh, when you are a strategic partner and that strategic vendor is giving AI tools, you will most likely adopt it. So let's say your company is using Salesforce, and tomorrow Salesforce gives a, I don't know, a CRM Copilot or
Hmm.
something, then most likely will adopt it. So that adoption comes naturally. So I don't see a lot of, it might just be an addendum in your SOW, nothing else, okay, or a contract. But when you are going to a completely new tool and adopting it, just like, let's say, PPT summarize a tool that is somewhere by a startup, that it's a little bit more challenging to adopt. That is one. And now going to company itself, going to production, difficult. It's not very simple. At least what I have seen is that internal chatbots are getting released and all, but
Hmm.
whenever something has an external facing kind of an angle, it's becoming, it has not, I mean, some have gone to production, true, but yeah, there is a lot of hesitancy, and rightly so, and people still don't know, for example, how should I monitor them, what should I do. So that's what I say, right? The 450 or roughly projects that I think Accenture is doing or stuff, I think most of them are POCs, they were saying in that article. So it's like many people are still in that POC stage, as we hope they would. And I don't personally think that just GenAI will bring in a $10 billion PNL tomorrow, but yeah, kind of including it and again gaining efficiencies, right? So for example, what I heard is that GitHub Copilot, there was a survey that the people said in Microsoft, so there was a team in Microsoft who were pushed GitHub Copilot, and they said there was a survey done at the end of using Copilot for 3 months. They said, will you leave Copilot or leave your lunch money? So that's,
Hmm.
and I think 90% or 80% said, I will leave my lunch money, but I will not leave. I think Microsoft Copilot, meaning M365 Copilot or GitHub Copilot, I forgot. The
Hmm.
Teams Copilot, for example, if you see, it summarizes your
Yeah.
stuff. So those things are great. So adoption will be good. And if you can build great products, yeah, people I think will adopt it. But yeah, it's a challenge. People have to still figure it out. And another thing that I've seen is that many people are building the stuff that in future, let's say, for example, a company builds something that reads all your Outlook emails and makes very nice suggestions. Then Microsoft is coming with M365 Copilot, which is just doing that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that is also a problem, the same problem that every single company has with a hyperscaler, right? So for example, when OpenAI released the GPT thing, many startups were just doing that. They were doing normal RAG, and they were in a problem. So having that unique business proposition, so that's why I personally feel products, well established products which already has a value proposition, that you already
Yeah.
created, let's say an observability platform that you have created, which already has a value proposition. You don't have to prove that. Then you enhance it into GenAI rather than building a tool just for GenAI. That might be a little bit more challenging.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Any, I think we are pretty much towards the end of it. Any thoughts that we haven't covered that you want to actually share it with the viewers?
No, so the only thing I will say is that again, I mean, but I personally feel that obviously this is a interesting as well as challenging space. But I think this will redefine for at least for people like us who are trying to kind of stay active and stay relevant in this IT industry. This will kind of dictate the rest 10 to 15 years, whether for good or for bad, I don't know, but it will dictate. The other things that came before that, let it be metaverse and blockchain, even though they were very interesting, but they never kind of penetrated in the way that this already has, right? So it was isolated space people were using. So you could still say, okay, I don't know metaverse, but my job will not go and I will get promotions and all. But now with this thing, unless and until you kind of put your 50-60% of your work effort or personal effort into it, it will be very challenging. So I encourage everybody to kind of dip their toes into this interesting space.
Awesome. Hey, thanks a lot, Tuja. Pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Satya. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Amnic team.